Okay, welcome back. This is week 17. I apologize. Last week, I did not see you, depending on what period you have me, on Thursday and Friday because I caught a cold, or rather, what I think. I got sick over the break and I didn't really take time to actually rest and slow down because it was the holidays and things were busy. And so I think my cold from then just kind of came back because, you come back from break and you're sleeping in every day and then all of a sudden it's back to a normal routine and you're just going, going, going. So I got sick. I'm back now. I'm feeling much, much better, although my voice is kind of still a little hoarse. Anyway, this week is marking 4 weeks left of semester one, if you're including this week, and we're going to be starting a little mini unit that will take us to finals week. So, we are starting something that I am calling American Lit Circles. This is going to be right now. I'm going to just give you kind of like the explanation as to why we're doing what we're doing and how I kind of came up with this thought process because I feel like teachers a lot of times don't do that. They don't tell you why or how something came to be. So, anyway, not that you all look at the state standards for English language arts, because I highly doubt you ever have before in your life, but when you look at them for English 11 for junior year, a lot of the standards, when we're talking about literature, we're talking about American literature. If you go into college and take literature classes, you're going to look at a lot of British literature, and then outside of your junior year, I think maybe sophomore year, you're going to look at a lot of world literature, but this year is solely American lit. And I had an experience when I was maybe junior, sophomore in college. I think it was a junior. I was at Western Oregon University and I took one of my most favorite classes ever. It was basically a humanities class, meaning my two loves of social studies and English combined into one class. So I'll show you when I see you in person, but I have this massive anthology. An anthology is a collection of all different types of writing, and it's huge. It looks like you could hit somebody over the side of the head and knock them out because it's so massive of American literature, stemming back from like Christopher Columbus days or first pilgrims, pioneers, all the way to as close to present day as we can get, like early 21st century. And basically, all that we did in that class was come to class, and our homework was to read whatever our professor assigned us, and then we would just talk about it the whole period. And I think we had like 2 or 3 assignments that whole class for that term, and it was just writing essays. But other than that, it was you read on your own and then you come to class and you talk about it. And the thing that was so interesting and fun to me, other than just um, talking about it in class, was getting to actually read primary source documents from historical figures that we learn about in social studies or that we see in Disney movies, like actual real historical figures, hearing their words or reading them rather, and seeing what they lived through and experienced. And it was so interesting because a lot of times when we're looking at history, we look at learning about dates and facts and things from a outside perspective, but rarely do we get to actually read the words of the people that we're learning about. And so that's what we're going to be doing in this unit. So here's what's going to happen. You know that I love giving you choice. I don't want to force you to read one thing and only one thing only. So I selected out of the entire anthology, which was a lot, 6 options of primary source American lit docs to choose from. But instead of me just saying, okay, here are the 6, now go pick, I wanted to make it a little bit more fun and creative and interesting. And it came from this idea. A couple years ago, I was at Barnes and Noble and they had this little section called Blind Date with a Book. And so they literally wrapped these books so that you could not see the cover, don't judge a book by its cover type of thing. And they put either a quick synopsis or like the first 2 lines of the book on the outside. And that's how you chose the book. And then you would literally go to check out and pay for it and not know what it was until you opened it when you got home. I thought that was super interesting and like mysterious and pretty engaging. And so I decided to do the same thing with this in terms of how you're going to choose. So I'm going to give you a quick, it's not really a synopsis, it's more like, because it's not a summary in total, but just a quick little something to give you a sneak peek as to what the text is about. And then you're going to pick it and then you're going to read it. And then eventually, I'll go over the rubric with you later. You're going to do a whole project on this and we'll talk about that in a second. So here are Very briefly, this is what your project is going to cover. The idea behind this is that no matter which document and author you pick, you're going to do a little project presentation that just kind of does some discovery around this. What is the historical event, the historical figure, either emphasizing on one or the other, but definitely doing both? How does that person or historical event or both, how do they have a connection to right now, the present, through the impact that they made in history? Whether that be like the person themselves being a influential person, or like the work that they did, their writings. So you're trying to figure out how did they make an impact on today through, how they've existed throughout the past. So here are your options. Number one, if I cannot speak on my deathbed, these are the things I wish to tell you. Number two, in reality, there is perhaps no one of our natural passions so hard to subdue as pride. Disguise it, struggle with it, beat it down, stifle it, mortify it as much as one pleases. It is still alive and will every now and then peep out and show itself. You will see it perhaps often in this history. For even if I could conceive that I had completely overcome it, I should probably be proud of my humility. Number three, I couldn't help myself. What I thought was one night turned into 20 years. When I woke up, everything was different. No sooner had these syllables passed my lips than, as if a shield of brass had indeed, at that moment, fallen heavily upon a floor of silver, I became aware of a distinct, hollow, metallic, and clangorous, yet apparently muffled reverberation. Completely unnerved, I started convulsively to my feet. Number five, what he most dreaded, that I most desired. What he most loved, that I most hated. That which to him was a great evil, to be carefully shunned, was to me a great good, to be diligently sought. And the argument which he so warmly urged against my learning to read only served to inspire me with a desire and determination to learn. And then the last option, because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. So let me go over the rubric with you. I'm going to kind of do rapid fire in this video, but if you want more questions answered, please let me know. This is linked on Canvas. So again, you are doing, after you read this and I give you some other activities to go along with it, your job is to you're going to create a slideshow presentation and present it to the class. And you're going to feature the historical event or whatever's happening in the text that you chose, and then the person who wrote it, the figure. You're going to identify how they have made an impact in society and culture today through what's happened in the past. And then you're going to, I'll go over what happens in a 3. You're going to summarize the text that you chose, just kind of telling everybody what it is. So for a 3, you're going to summarize the text, talking about what kind of text is it and what it's about, and then explain in detail how either the author or the event, so you kind of get to pick, has made an impact throughout history and today. If you're doing a 4, you're doing those same things, but you're going to talk about the author and the event itself. And then I also want you to pick a line or a passage that stood out to you and explain what you liked or found interesting about it. You're going to be doing some research because you're going to need to talk about this other than just like the source itself. So all your sources need to be cited on a slide at the end of the slideshow. You're going to make a presentation on Google Slides, and I need to have images and visuals as well. And then you're going to present it to the class in a 3 to 5 minute speech. Now, I'm going to talk about this later too. If you know somebody else in the class that chose the same thing as you and you would like to work on your presentation together and present it together, you totally can. But I don't want you to necessarily pick your document just purely because you want to work with your friend. I want you to pick something that's actually going to be interesting for you to read. And then I'll show you this more later next week. But in terms of trying to find sources, our Gale database thing that Miss Bazzizo showed you back when we wrote our research paper, they have a whole section just about U.S. history. So this is going to be really helpful for you when you're trying to research for your project. Okay. So this is something that we were supposed to do last week when I got sick. We are going to watch this TED Talk. And by the way, I don't think I mentioned in the video, you don't have slides to do today because it's all about diving into the text and reading and making notes. But we're going to do this in class, and then you're going to have some questions to answer. And then we're going to talk about how to actually annotate a text, because when I tell you I need you to annotate and take notes, I don't even know if you know what that means, because there's multiple different ways you could do it. And I really don't care how you do it as long as you do it in a way that's helpful for you and you're consistent at it. So I'm going to show you a couple ways, different options. This is usually my route of annotating. I do this, and this is a picture I took of one of my textbooks when I read the Odyssey in college. Anytime I am reading anything, I, for one thing, like to make sure that I own, if it's not printed out on paper, I like to own the book so I can write in it. Obviously, you can't do that if it's from the library, but highlighting anything that's important, like important quotes, underlining anything that I think is like super important or maybe important to the plot for later, making notes on the side about character actions, figurative language. This is what I like to do. And you might be horrified at this because some people, for whatever reason, believe that you shouldn't write in books, even if you own them. I write in my books all the time because it really helps me to like visually see. And sometimes, honestly, when I had to take like a quiz in college, if I had made all these notes and then went through and studied them, I could remember like visually in my brain, oh yeah, I wrote something about King Alcinius up at the top right on the page next to the highlight. It works for my brain. It might not work for you, but here's an option. The second option of something that you could do to take notes, I'm going to provide this for you, is just a note taking sheet. So for this one, I made this for you. It's separated in categories, kind of like a graphic organizer. Put the name of the text and excuse me, the author up top. So in this one, you can, as you're reading, if you don't want to write in your copy or you can't, make notes about comments, summarizing things, writing down questions, important quotes. This is also a really good option, especially if you like graphic organizers. Next up is good old fashioned sticky notes or color coding or both. Again, if you cannot write in the text because you don't own it or for whatever reason you don't want to, using sticky notes is really helpful. And then color coding, whether that be with sticky notes or the pen that you're using, highlighter colors. Color coding, like if you're trying to analyze certain things throughout a text, that can also be incredibly helpful. Again, I'm just giving you options. I'm not asking you to use one or the other. I want you to use a note taking strategy that works for you. But those are some ideas. So, in class on Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm going to give you a good amount of time to read your text in class. I would say that most of these texts, you have quite a few pages to read. They're all pretty much the same length. Some of them are like two of them are short stories, one of them is a letter, two of them are autobiography excerpts, one of them is a selection of poetry. So you've got a variety of different texts, and they're all pretty much the same length. So I'm trying to give you some time in class to read. Okay, and then on Thursday and Friday, we're going to start off with the first chapter Friday. I'm fairly certain I have not done this one with you. This is called Bomb by Steve Sheinkin, and it's one of my favorite books of all time. And it talks about the building of the atomic bomb. If you love movies and you love Christopher Nolan, he's the guy that directed Batman, the Batman trilogy with Christian Bale. He's coming out with a movie this summer called Oppenheimer, and this book heavily talks about Oppenheimer because he's the one responsible for creating and building the atomic bomb. Okay, I'm going to give you some more time in class to read. And then after that, I want you to get together in groups with the people that chose the same document as you and have a little discussion time. This is one, to help you collaborate, and two, to help each other out, because um, somebody next to you who's reading the same document could have seen something that you totally missed, or a perspective or whatever. So I want you to have time to talk through things with them, regardless of if you're doing your presentation together or not. So these are some questions. What did the American Lit figure write about? What confused you? What was interesting to you? What do you want to research specifically? And then what does answering the question, what impact does that person or text have on life today? And then we're going to take a look at this because, you are 21st century people, 21st century students. I have no doubts in my mind that you know how to make a Google slideshow presentation. But that doesn't mean that I can just throw you out and let you do it and not worry about it having some issues. So, what I mean by that is I want to kind of walk through with you. I found this, I did not make this, by the way. This is a PowerPoint that I found on the internet. I want to show you how to make PowerPoints, Google Slides presentations that don't suck, and 5 design mistakes that you can avoid to make it really good. So, 5 shocking mistakes that you need to avoid. Number 1, having too much information. If you're going to put word for word what you're going to say, hand over the slides and just take a seat, because nobody wants to stare at a screen where it's just words, words, words. It's a lot. It's a lot of information. Putting all your points on one slide is not great, and it kind of invites the audience to just be reading rather than actually listening to you. So make sure you're not overloading your slides with words. A good trick is to keep 1 point per slide. And then be aware that you don't need to include every bit of information you find, because what you could do is put the most relevant, important information on the slide physically, but then communicate those other details when you're speaking. It works really nicely when you do that. Number 2, not enough visuals. Images are really important because, for one thing, they're just interesting to look at, and 2, they help make us they help make our brains make connections between the content and then something visual. The slideshow is showing you different places to get good pictures. I love using Canva or Unsplash. I've linked on our resource module in Canvas all different types of websites that you can get really great pictures, so go ahead and take a look at that later. You don't have to use these very cheesy stock pictures from Google. And remember that you need to use it so that people can see it from far away. Which leads us to number 3, horrible quality. Pixelation. This is not a great picture. I don't even know what's going on here. Oh, there we go. Much better. Using high quality pictures to the actual right size is super important. And then for fonts, these are really, really not your only options. You can use lots of different fonts. I would recommend using, honestly, like if you want to go all out with this presentation, use Canva. All of my slides that I make that have like a theme and a color palette and all of that, I use on Canva, and they have a ton of different fonts that are all just built into the program of Canva. Number 4, all over the place. Spacing, alignment, making things look clean and crisp, and like you put stuff there on purpose instead of just throwing pictures on, is really important. I would say more often than not, students are using Google Slides to make presentations. PowerPoint used to be like really the only way to do it. So just be aware that depending on what platform you use, things can change. Having cohesive colors, images, it all helps to make your PowerPoint look aligned and together. I don't know if you're aware, but a color scheme really does make an impact. And if you're like, I have no idea how to make that, there's this really cool website called coolers.co. That's a great resource to help make a color scheme. And then the most common mistake is lack of prep, aka procrastinating. Most presentations suck because not enough time went into making them, and it shows. It really does show, because good presentations take time. So that means you need to get organized and plan ahead, or thank your teacher because she's giving you lots of time in class next week to work on this project. 86, and if you don't believe me as to why this is important, 86% of top executives say that communicating with clarity directly impacts their career and income. 25% only spend more than 2 hours making these high stakes presentations. So we gotta see what we're valuing here. An outstanding 1 hour presentation, which, by the way, the presentation I'm asking you to make is like 3 to 5 minutes, so a lot less, can take 30 more hours of prep time, which is crazy, I know. But it's all worth it, because you can tell when somebody's putting lots of effort and into something when they value it. So please design it, create it. Don't just put something together really quickly, because if you do, that's not the program's fault. That's your fault. So there you go. That is all I have for you for this week. If you have any questions, please let me know.